Writers, the stories that made us who we are.
Well, here we are again for episode 3 of Raised by Writers, the stories that make us who we are, and we have a jam-packed show, as ever, with some pretty star turns this week as well. My author guest later on in the show will be the wonderful Tom Percival. He's going to be here talking about the books that he read as he was growing up. We've got Kirsty Woods from Kibworth Books. She's going to be choosing something from the Read for Empathy collection for us, and our teacher recommendation this week is from the brilliant Esther from Mrs. Brown's Book Box. So, as I said, a very packed show. Let's crack on. But before we get to any of that, it is, of course, time for my reading recommendation this week, going back into my own personal bookshelf. And this week, it's a really special one. We're talking about one of my first Ladybird books. And it really was one of my first. I think it was actually bought for my first birthday. And it is the title called Bunny's First Birthday. Now, like with all these Ladybird books, pretty much the cover title says exactly what happens in the book. It's a birthday party for Bunny. It's his first birthday. I will read you the very first page just to give you some sort of inkling as to what's going on. Baby Bunny on his birthday sat on Mummy Bunny's knee while she wrote a little letter asking all his friends to tea. Off they pattered to the farmyard, knocked and knocked upon the door. Farmyard folk were busy eating, didn't know the feast in store. And there really will be a feast in store. It's a wonderful platter that's put on by Mrs. Bunny for all the farmyard animals who have a little trauma getting there. Yes, Piggly ends up in the bottom of a river. The Quackies have some sort of issue as they're making their way there. There's all sorts of problems with Mother Hen up on the cobbles. It's filled with trauma, but it's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's really simple. It's some farmyard animals going on a journey so that Baby Bunny can have his first birthday. The thing that really sticks with me when I go back and read all of these books is this is entirely in verse, and it's really in. If you go back and look at some of my work that I've published, it's been work that's in that kind of rhyme scheme and in that kind of sense of meter and rhythm, and it's been drilled into me ever since I was 1 year old. So 47 years later, it's still with me, and I think there's a real thing here of the literature that we start with, the journey that we go on. I was started on rhyme. I was started on rhythm, and it's stayed with me all of my life. So if you want to get a copy of that one, then go and have a look for it. It's the Ladybird Books series, which is, of course, one of the Penguin titles, one of their imprints, and it's Bunny's First Birthday. Well, I'm absolutely delighted that we're taking a bit of a turn this week, because we speak to librarians all the time, we speak to teachers all the time, we speak to authors all the time. But actually, the people who are at the forefront of all this are the people who are selling us these books in the first place. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined from Kibworth Books by Kirsty Woods. Kirsty, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's lovely to talk to you, and you're literally on the front line. You're working with booksellers. You're working, with children coming in. You're a specialist children's bookseller within your bookshop, aren't you? And you're also a member of the chair of the Children's Booksellers Group. So you're well versed in all of the children's literature that's coming through, and particularly the ones in the Read for Empathy collection. You're world expert on this, I believe.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I definitely would never say I'm an expert, but I am very much an enthusiast. And yeah, I get the joy of working in a bookshop, which to me just feels like I have been a former, I've worked in libraries before, so I don't want to say it's the best job in the world totally, because I know that working in libraries is like also the best job in the world and like the most important. So, but yeah, no, I do love it. It is a real privilege to be there to chat to kids about books.
And we're living in this. I've often referred to it as the golden age of children's literature. When we were growing up, we didn't have the vast variety of children's books that are here now. And you must spend days just lost in your own catalogue of books, do you not?
Well, that's the thing. That's the curation bit is really hard, because I work for an independent bookshop, so we are very much like we curate very carefully. And so if something's in the bookshop, it's because either we've personally read it, or we personally would sort of stand by it or vouch for it, or we know that our customers will love it, will love those particular titles. So it's very much a curation. And it's really hard actually when you're purchasing for that curation, because there's just, like you say, there's such a wealth. And with the, best will in the world, you can't stock everything. And it would be incredible if we could just have this vast space where you could stock every single book that you wanted. But it does mean that, hopefully when people come and see us as a bookshop, they get the flavour of what we stand for in our values and what we think is important, and the kind of books that we really, really want to get into children's hands.
And this brings us on to the Read for Empathy collection, because Kibworth, I know, has been a big supporter of Empathy Day and the Empathy Day Festival in the past. And we've spoken before at events about the importance of the Read for Empathy collection. Now, we usually asked our guests to choose just the one book that they really like from the Read for Empathy collection. But actually, you said that was a near impossibility. So you employed the help of a world expert herself, I believe, did you not?
I did. This is the thing. So yes, we have very much championed the collection. I just absolutely am on board with everything that Empathy Lab do in terms of the mission and the importance of that Read for Empathy collection, because it's an incredible, powerful collection every single year. So we try to showcase it as best we can in the shop and try to kind of highlight it with schools and so on. And it's impossible to choose one because there are so many amazing titles within that. I am personally a big fan of picture books. Like I love picture books. And my children are 10 and 8 and 5, and even my 10-year-old, we still read picture books together, and we will do that for as long as she will let me read picture books with her, because I just believe so much in their potency and their power. And so I read some of the, I thought I'll go to the local library and we'll get some of the Empathy Read collection picture books out that we don't own. And my 5-year-old and I sat reading some of them yesterday, and it was just really interesting to see her insights as well and what she takes from it, because that's the whole point of the Empathy Reads, right? It's what children are learning from them and how they are building their sort of empathy muscles. And one that was really, really potent for both of us was the bicycle. And I mean, as a grown-up, me reading it, I'm obviously bringing to it, I have more of a sort of kind of the sort of understanding of like kind of current kind of cultural events and politics and my what's going on in the world and why this book is so important right now. And Edie, as a little 5-year-old, doesn't have that. She just is coming to this as a story, on the level of a story, and honestly she was so moved by it, just so moved by it. And it opened up such important conversations, and afterwards, for quite a long time afterwards, she was so moved. She was clinging on to me, like she was genuinely really,
there was like an emotional connection through the book.
There was such an emotional connection through it, and we talked about it a lot, and it provoked this response in her because she couldn't believe the idea that someone could be suddenly asked to, someone be in a position where they had to flee their own home, which of course as a 5-year-old is a scary concept. And so this book allowed us to talk about that feeling and have talk about like what that must have been like for Mevan, the girl in the bicycle, what it was like to have the kindness shown to her by the sort of stranger who gave her a bicycle. It just was so incredibly powerful as a kind of conversation starter. And so, I mean, that's just one example, isn't it, of one of the picture books from the collection, and how you could use that, as a parent, but also how you could use that to open up conversations in schools.
This is the thing, is that there are those awkward conversations, and sometimes we feel like, oh, it's on the news, oh, this is not suitable for children, or this is it. But actually they're going to school and they're going to meet people who may have been in that situation. This is not something that happens once in a blue moon. This is something that's happening across the world, and lots of children in schools will come into contact with people who are having these stories. It's a really powerful way to be able to explore it for kids in the safety of the book, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. And of course, you've got to, as the grown up, you've got to sort of, it's your responsibility to navigate it in an age appropriate way and kind of, put in place all the things that child, whatever age or stage they might be at, to actually understand it and to move on after the reading the book, to kind of sort of take something from it. But yeah, it's really important stuff. And she goes to a school where there are children there who are sort of, there's sort of Ukrainian refugees, and there's that she goes to such an incredibly beautiful, diverse school that actually she wants to talk about these things. Like, my children want to talk about these things, and they want stories that will allow them to ask questions.
Kirsty Woods, it's been absolutely fantastic to chat to you. Whereabouts in the world is Kibworth Books? So if we happen to be on passing through, we can come in and say hello.
So Kibworth Books is in Leicestershire. It was founded in 2009. So we've been on the high street for a long time, and I've been there since 2019. But it's in Leicestershire. It's just outside of Leicester and Market Harborough, and it's a whenever people come in and see us, they say, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's such a big bookshop in a village." So come and be surprised and inspired. And yeah, absolutely, please do come and see us. We work with loads of schools all across the county and beyond, and so we are there to support schools. We're there to support families and children. So yeah, please do come and see us.
Absolutely fantastic. Kirsty, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And so we come to my guest today. He is an award-winning writer, an artist, a video producer, and a musician. He's multi-talented, to say the least. His Big Bright Feelings books, including, of course, titles like Ruby's Worry, Ravi's Roar, and Perfectly Norman, have been translated into over 20 different languages. And his first novel...
26, I think.
26. There we go. It's already out of date, my research. The Wrong Shoes recently won the Week Junior's Older Fiction Award. Of course, he creates memorable characters, deeply resonant stories such as Isabel in The Invisible, of course, the memorable Rowan in The River, if you've ever read that and cried your eyes out at it. His books are guaranteed to stir emotions of every reader. He's worked alongside organisations such as Children in Need and the National Literacy Trust. And we are very, very lucky to have him with us today. Tom Percival, how on earth are you doing?
Oh, I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
It's look, honestly, when I came to kind of précis what it is that having Tom Percival on the show would be, I struggled to write this because there's too much to include. I could have gone like a minute and a half of just this, and he did this, and he's done this, and he's busy there. Your life is a very busy time at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I am pretty busy, but it's all I feel really lucky in that it's all projects that I feel really excited by for various different reasons. Some of them are really personal, and others are just a really great opportunity, or I get to work with people whose work I really respect. So I'm doing lots of projects that I'm really excited about.
Indeed, and you've given us some time today to come on the podcast, and we always ask before we get into the nitty-gritty of which books you've chosen, because it is an impossible task to just choose the 3 books, and we've already off air just talked about 4 books already, and we might sneak another one in there at some point or another. But whenabouts in history were you reading these books, and sort of set the scene for us? Was it trips to the library? Were the books at home? What was your?
It's a real combination in terms of where I was getting these books from. Predominantly the library, but school as well. So it would have been early 80s, I guess. The first book I'll talk about is from the early 80s. It's all in the 80s. That was when I was a kid. And then so I was born late 70s, kid in the 80s, teenager in the 90s. And I think those times were good times to do all of those things. Personally, I feel like I hit the sweet spot with all of those things, because obviously when it was the 90s, it was all rave and Britpop and all of these things that I could get really into musically. So books wise, this is all in the 80s. So I grew up in a very remote area on the border of Mid Wales. The primary school I went to, when I left that school, the first primary school I went to had 13 children in the whole school. So it was a very, it was a very, very small kind of like remote, rural, like village school. And it was in that school that I was taught to read, really. Well, I guess I can't actually remember if my mum always read to me, so I would have absorbed a lot of reading at home, but it was probably in school that was solidifies, and that was where I was given the first book that I'll talk about, which was a reading scheme series, and it was from school that I got those.
Indeed. And I think we've got very similar memories, because I remember somebody asking me, and I don't remember a time where I couldn't read. It was almost that it was, I don't remember the process of learning to read. It was just kind of like,
Yeah.
there being early books, and there was always books around because I was being read to. And it was just a case of kind of.
Yeah, in fact, I do remember feeling frustrated. And in, like, funny, because just before we started recording, you were chatting about when people are dismissive of reading schemes that you've loved. And I remember being a bit dismissive of Peter and Jane, and someone that I used to work with being like, what? Like, how dare you?
But Jane has a ball, Tom. Jane has a ball.
Yeah. But I think what happened for me was that, I obviously must have been able to read, because I found that I was like, really? Come on. Like, I was bored by the lack of narrative. And so this is why when they let me kind of read up ahead through to this kind of reading scheme called Tim and the Hidden People, I was just immediately gripped, because they were real stories, and they were already, I mean, for a reading scheme, they start, actually looking at them now, they're really complicated. They're like, the first one is like the kind of where you'd be aiming for in like present reading scheme. So I think that maybe they were pitched. They were, there was no soft entry to it. It was pretty much like, right, here you go.
Well, so tell me about these books, because all of your books today are ones that I've not read, which I find really refreshing on this pod, because it's lovely to be able to rediscover books that sometimes I think have been forgotten about, or may have gone out of print, or maybe you might have to hunt for them on eBay to find them. I certainly.
Oh yeah, God, well, you wouldn't want to hunt for these, because they go for obscene amounts of money. Basically, with my first book deal, I was able to, I went on an absolute eBay binge and just bought up as many as I could. Because my first book was called Tobias and the Super Spooky Ghost Book. Right. And in Tim and the Hidden People, he's got this friend who's a cat, a magical cat, and the cat is called Tobias. So that was like a kind of homage to because he's like the character Tobias in the Super Spooky Ghost Book is quite mischievous, and Tobias the cat is, well, mischievous, I think, is sort of putting it nicely. He's like an absolute swine, just a real like totally untrustworthy, like can be quite definitely sarcastic, quite sometimes mean, and doesn't really care what anyone thinks. And I don't know why that like I was just like, wow, that's really, like, I really loved that character. So I think it was a reading scheme, and it was about this boy called Tim, and he finds this key that enables him to see the hidden people, which are kind of like ghosts, and so they just exist in our, like, on our plane of existence, but we can't see them and have nothing to do with them ordinarily. But if you have a key, if the hidden people have given you a key or a coin in some instances, then you can see them. And and I just immediately, like I said, I went from like Peter has a ball, Peter, dog, and Jane, and all of this sort of thing. It was like, okay, this is like listing things that I can see in the pictures. I was suddenly into like gripping stories of like magic and intrigue and a real sense of danger that just, I loved it. And
sounds like there's almost this kind of like, here is a hidden world, and the characters are being allowed into a hidden world, but that's also taking the audience in with you. We are being allowed like a peek behind the curtain of this.
Definitely. And I 100% wanted to be in it, to go there. I mean, I still, like, to this, I do some fan art sometimes. I'm just like, I love it so much that I'm just like, and I think it would make such a good, it would be really good for it to in some way be kind of reimagined. It's one of these things that if I ever had enough time, energy, like, potentially money, I'd be like, let's make it, let's just do it, like do a self-published thing of it. And funny enough, there was this guy.
This is where these things start. This is day one of that project. It's gonna, because you weren't busy enough, quite frankly.
Well, there's quite a few people who feel really strongly about them, and this guy contacted me on Instagram because he had loved those books when he was a kid, and he's doing a documentary about Sheila K. McCullach, the author, and the Pat Cook, because the illustrations were a big part of what drew me to it. They were just really kind of, I mean, they're a bit odd. Looking at them now, they're not the best drawings in the world, and this is one of the things that I love. And I whenever I do school talks, I talk to the children about how important it is to not to devalue your work because it's not, in inverted commas, good enough, because someone is going to love it, and I loved those pictures. And I look at them now, and I'm a, like professional illustrator, and I can see ways in which they're not perfect, but they still have this like magic and energy, and yeah, they're still hugely evocative. And I love that about it as well. There's a lot I love about it. I could seriously talk for half an hour at least about my love for these books.
I wish I had half an hour with you. It's but this is what illustration does. There's such a range of illustration. I mean, some people may look at Gerald Scarfe or Quentin Blake and go, "That's messy. That's not finished." But it's that style, and that it brings it alive.
I actually used to be very much. In fact, it was Gerald Scarfe's work that made me, as I got older. It was seeing and appreciating his work that made me reevaluate. Because it's like, this is going to sound off as like, I don't really rate Quentin Blake, but when I was a kid, it didn't work for me. As a child, I was very fastidious, and like whenever I did my drawings, they were very controlled, very neat, and it was all about trying to mimic what I could see and get it to look as real and as good as possible. And I was always like, but like you say, it's messy. It doesn't, and obviously now I love it, and I love everything about it. But it's funny, isn't it? And I think that's interesting as well, how you change as an individual over time. It's something that you can have an actual aversion to, you grow to love. And in fact, I now kind of try to bring more and more energy into my work, and I really struggle because for the past however many years I've just focused on being so like controlled and neat and tidy. I mean, I guess I'm self-taught, and I think maybe that's part of the problem. I should have gone to art school and had that beaten out of me and just been like, no, you've got to draw with a chair leg. That's it.
Tom, you should have gone to art school. It's not worked out at all for you. I'm going to have to bring us on to your second choice of book.
Yeah.
Now, look, there is a running theme coming here, because we've got Hidden People, and now we've got The Dark is Rising. You're taking us down some deep, dark alleyways here. What is this book from Susan Cooper? What are your memories of this one?
When I was a kid, I lived in a caravan in this place on the border of Mid Wales, South Shropshire, and my abiding memory of that time was that it was very, very cold. And this book, there's a scene in the book where the main character, Will, and actually I don't name all of my characters after characters in books that I love, but most of them. Will wakes up, and it's, I can't remember if is it Christmas Eve? It must be Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day. I can't know. It's Christmas Eve. Yeah, he wakes up, and there's been this heavy, heavy snowfall, and no one in the rest of his house can wake up. It's only him who is awake. He can't wake anyone else in his family. And when he walks out of the door, the house isn't where it is meant to be. It's just in the middle of this forest, and there are these tall trees and all of this snow. And it was just
Wizard of Oz vibe of we've moved. We don't know quite how or why we.
Sort of. Well, it's not so much that it's moved. It's just that it's moved within time. I think that's his understanding. I don't think it hasn't physically moved, and he doesn't feel it's physically moved, but it is definitely not where or when it is meant to be. And then he encounters these, again, magical, exciting. It's massive. It's escapism, but relatable escapism. And again, both characters I connected to a lot for different reasons. And it's such a magical book. And they did a recent, maybe it was like 3 years ago, they did a version of it on the radio. And they had Johnny Flynn, whose guitar work I love. He did the music for it. He did. Do you know the Detectorists?
Oh yeah,
he did the theme tune for the Detectorists. He's a folk musician. He's an actor as well, actually, very talented chap. But yeah. So, and there's a bunch of people again whose work I really like. who like Robert McFarlane, and he's done music, I think, with Johnny Flynn. Yeah, and so it's funny, isn't it? I think that people who have, for whom certain books resonate as a kid, like there's something in the sensibilities within that book that maybe it's funny that these people who loved that book when I was a kid that I love the work that they do as adults.
Yeah, there's almost a kind of like, because it's not explicit, you wouldn't know anything about the author, but there's a kind of vibe of somebody who is multidisciplinary, who talks about, you know, the language of music, or talks about the language of nature, or talks about, and there's all sorts of things that people will bring to the party when they're writing, and maybe that called out to you, maybe. And we'll get to the big question of whether you think it's the book steered you that way, or whether you were like that and you were drawn to the books. I still can't quite work out where that fits for everybody, about whether we've got this predetermined line or whether we're influenced by these books that we read. But I mean, I talked about The Dark is Rising, and no, that was, I said we were going fairly dark, and then your final one is The Devil on the, we're literally in hell now, so
Devil on the Road.
You want to get Devil on the Road.
It's a misunderstanding. That's how this character is interpreted. If this book was brought out now, it would be a YA book. In fact, I think it's by Robert Westall, who wrote The Machine Gunners and a bunch of other really famous Carnegie. I think The Scarecrow might have also won the Carnegie. So anyway, they're very gritty books that explore a very genuine, authentic kind of warts and all. Like he doesn't spare his characters from having unlikable traits. He has characters who are openly aggressive. They're not worried about that. They just behave in the way that they behave, and then respond accordingly to the situations that they find themselves in, which I find really interesting. I've always loved his writing. I've always found it really, just really believable. So many characters get so sanitized, I find, and in terms of like longer fiction, obviously in picture books, I'm not saying that we're like, hey kids, life is tough, and the sooner you realize that, the better. But I do think that once you get it into long form novels, I think we can credit readers with just a bit more, I don't know, just intelligence, really. We can allow them to understand the character and see that this character has genuine flaws. I'm not talking about like, it's just a tacked on flaw. It's like, sometimes I'm just like too nice to people. It's like an actual real problem, because we all have aspects to our personality that are not so good, and we behave badly sometimes, and then it's about how you kind of cope with that. And I think a lot of the time in children's fiction, well, not all of it obviously, but I do think that these things are sort of can be glossed over a bit, because it's hard to have a main character with traits that are unlikable. And Robert Westall's books never did that. And so The Devil on the Road it's actually I think it's a YA book. It's a slightly older protagonist, and he rides a motorbike, and it's a time slip drama. He ends up kind of going between the present day and the Civil War. And so it's this and he's got this helmet that's like not a round head, but he sort of gets mistaken for a round head because he's wearing a motorcycle helmet. But obviously the motorbike roars, and they're frightened of it, and so he's seen as this devil. Plus he has understandings of things that he shouldn't, because he's from the future.
Witchcraft, I tells ye.
It is, exactly. So there's all of that in it. So basically all of these books contain quite a lot of magic and intrigue and supernatural is actually in these books. They all have a supernatural quality to them, but the characters are rooted and real and earthed and grounded and plausible and believable, and you are with them 100%. And that connects all of those books, and I feel connects with what I do. That's what I'm striving for.
Yeah.
And in fact, like all of my books have a subtle layer of magic to them, I would say. Some of them more so than others. Certainly the more successful, as in, when I say successful, as in the ones that I feel are more successful stories have more magic. And I would like to lean into that more. I've got like a bunch of ideas for I've got like 4 novel ideas that I would like to do, 2 of which are like basically veering into kind of almost definitely fantastical, if not fantasy, and I would like to explore that side of things more. But publishing, it's like they kind of want you to do what you do. Do you know what I mean? You're like,
you're doing this well. This one's.
I don't want to do this too, and they're like, yeah. Just do a bit more of that. Do a bit more of that, and then we can think about that maybe down the line. Give it a couple of years.
Yeah, we're still shifting units on this one, Tom. So let's.
Yeah, exactly. This is where we are.
But this is going to be one of my questions, is that, we talked about the supernatural, we talked about the kind of slightly ephemeral characters in the fantasy worlds. If you look at things like Perfectly Norman, he develops wings, for example, in The Invisible, Isabel turns invisible. There are those moments of that magical quality. Did you find when you moved into writing a novel, writing The Wrong Shoes, that actually that was quite a shift for you to be firmly rooted in the reality of Will's character? Well,
I think even The Wrong Shoes, because there's the owl is, to my mind, the owl is I don't even know if the owl is real. Like, while I was writing it, I was writing it and trying to bear in mind that it either is or it isn't, and trying to make the story feel plausible in both scenarios. Because I liked that ambiguity, and it's too big. The owl is too big, it's too white, it's too unlikely. But yes, he has a feather, he finds a feather, but is that from the owl? Do you know what I mean? Like, I was trying to play that sort of game with it the whole way through. And it definitely, it's absolutely, symbolic. It's a symbolic role that the owl plays. But like I say, I'm not sure if it's real. And I'm working on a new book, actually writing it. So one that I have been commissioned to write, which has a slightly stronger thread of that to it. That kind of, that sort of ambiguity around reality and imagination, and how that can help save us, or at least how that can bring elements of your consciousness to the fore and make you consider how you're behaving. And that's what I like to try and do with all these things. So the supernatural elements act as supernatural is the wrong words, but the more than real elements, act as a prompt to help the characters ultimately work out solutions to their problems.
And when I mentioned to you about going back and finding these books, did you then sort of make that sort of physical journey in your head between, this is what I read and actually this is where I've ended up? Do you think that we're swayed by what we read? Or because I found some personal moments in some of the early books that I've read. I didn't realize, for example, that all of the early books I was given, every single one of them rhymed. I've turned into becoming a rhyming poet as my main job. It really has kind of gone in somewhere in the back of my brain, is that this is how you communicate with people, Paul. This is how people want to be, spoken to in the written word. Do you find that you look back on these books now and go, actually, it's not just character names or little moments or little Easter eggs that I'm putting in, but actually that these have defined me as an artist or as a person? Or
it's genuinely, I think it's impossible to say. Like you said, it's a very chicken and egg. Did these books resonate with me because that was a kind of intrinsic understanding I had of the world, and then I chose things that reflected that understanding back at me? Or was it that I had no concept of these ideas, and then this brought that to life in my head. I couldn't tell you. I'd need to do it. I'd need to do it all again and not read them, and then I'll tell you. Sure.
So we need a control group, is what you're saying. Is we need a second Tom. But well, you've got a lot of things here. There's some time shifting going on. If we can just
surely we can do this. We can do this. We can send one back. Give me a twin.
We'll send a Tom back to Robert Westall and Susan Cooper. We'll go back to the fork in the devil on the road, and it will all be. We'll be able to solve it that way.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Now, look, as I've mentioned at the top of all of this, you are relentlessly busy at the moment. The fact that I've managed to grab half an hour with you is a miracle, quite frankly. What is it that you're working on at the moment? What can you tell us? Because I know that sometimes in the publishing world, there's things that are shrouded in mystery and things that can't be talked about just yet.
I don't really know
what lots on the go, haven't you?
I don't know what I'm meant to talk about and what I'm not meant to talk about.
You'll find out when this is broadcast.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get a cease and desist email. I'm working on a new picture book series with Bloomsbury. So I'm not saying I've done like my last ever Big Bright Feelings book. I wouldn't want to say I'm not doing any more, but I wanted to do something new. I have a lot of ideas and I love those books, and I'm so grateful for, what they've done for my career. That they've just bought, I don't know, like loads of people would never have encountered my work if it hadn't been for those books. And I love all of the stories that I've made, and I've definitely got a good 4 ideas I think would make really good Big Bright Feelings books, but I need a break from doing them. So I'm working on a new picture book series, which I can't say anything more about than that, but it's new and it's going to be great. And it's I'm excited about that. And I am illustrating a picture book edition of The Last Bear, which I definitely can talk about, by Hannah Gold. So the middle grade novel by Hannah Gold, which when they first approached me and said, "Oh, yeah, we're going to turn this like novel into a picture book," I was like, "What? This is a terrible idea. It's never going to work." I hadn't read the novel at that point, and they sent it over, and I was like, I'll read it and I'll have a think, but basically no. And then I read it and I was like, oh, actually, I can really see how this could work. And I've just literally yesterday, this is how busy I've been. I was working until like 8 o'clock last night and sent over to the publishers the roughs. And I'm looking at these drafts thinking like, yeah, I think there's some career best art in there. I'm really, really happy. There's a couple of pictures I feel really, really excited by. Which is funny because normally I'm pretty like, I like to be it's my idea and I made it and I wrote it and I drew the pictures and I played the theme song and I do the dance and like all of that. And so, but I think what I love about this so much is Hannah's story is just beautiful and something I wouldn't have done. And it's lovely to do that.
It is, and that world in itself. Hannah's obviously created a world around April, that character, and she's, Lone Husky's recently come out, and I think there's a film in the making as well. I think Studio Canal have taken up the rights to it as well. So there's this whole world that's going to be part of that, and this picture book is going to be, I'm almost certain, just a wonderful, complementary, beautiful retelling of that.
It will be. And like I say, I was reticent. I was almost I was as close to convinced as you can be without having read something, that I was just like, I'm not going to do this. This isn't for me. It's like, it's nice to be asked and everything, but like, no. And then like it's turned into, like I say, I feel like I've done some of the best artwork, just in the roughs. Like, these roughs are better than some of the final art that I've done. So I'm feeling really excited about it.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I mean, we we have to be patient with these things.
We do.
When we spoke to SF Said on the pod, and I asked him what he was doing next, he said, "Well, it was 5 years between my last two novels, and I've not finished this one yet, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer." That was it.
Yeah.
He said, "Wait another 5 years, you might get something out of me." Tom, it's been a delight to have you on the podcast today. Your choices of books. We're putting the whole series of Tim and the Hidden People. They're all going to be on the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my personal favourites are the early ones, which Pat Cook illustrated. No shade to the illustrator who came after, but I can't remember the name, and that says something. I was invested in those early ones. I was looking through to see who illustrated, like poring over the pictures. And the ones after just did, but actually, I hope that person isn't watching. Like, no offense.
Let's hope this podcast isn't too successful. The Tim and the Hidden People's going on there. The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper, and The Devil on the Road by Robert Westall, all heading onto our huge authors bookshelf of books we read when we were young.
Nice.
So thank you very much, Tom.
You are welcome.
What wonderful choices from Tom, and a brilliant insight into the writer that he became, a man going from strength to strength. And as I said in the interview, some of the work that Tom's done, some of the illustrations and the artwork that comes with his books, as well as the fantastic storytelling that he's proved himself as a novelist now, as well as a picture book story writer. Just wonderful, wonderful stuff. Now, we are going to turn to our teacher recommendation for this week. And you've got a bit of a 2-for-1 here, because you've got a bit of a celebrity in that Mrs. Brown's Book Box is something that's going from strength to strength over on Instagram for all of you bookstagrammers out there. But of course, Esther, who runs it, is also a primary school teacher in North Yorkshire, and she's got a brilliant recommendation for you right now.
Hi, I'm Esther, and one of the book series that has stayed with me is Scrambled Legs. In these books, 5 misfit ballerinas stick together to get one over on the other girls in the class, known to them as the Bunheads. I love these books because I was a keen dancer as a child and teen. However, I was often clumsy, had a more athletic physique than the traditional ballerina image, and was a keen snack lover. In fact, I was once told by my teacher that I moved less like a swan and more like a pigeon. I related to these girls, and also the stories and their exploits really made me laugh. These books felt familiar and comforting. The characters made me feel seen and made tween me know that I shouldn't take myself too seriously, and realise that if you're doing something you love with friends, then just keep doing it.
Scrambled Legs. What a fantastic idea for a series. Sometimes you hear a title and you think, I wish I'd thought of that. Now, thank you very much to Esther for her recommendation. You can find her over on Mrs. Brown's Book Box over on Instagram. Great recommendation, that one. The books we've had in the conversation today on Raised by Writers: Bunny's First Birthday, Ladybird book, written by A.J. McGregor, the story, and then verses by W.Perring. We've also had from Tom Percival 3 brilliant books: Tim and the Hidden People by Sheila McCullach, The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper, and The Devil on the Road by Robert Westall as well. Fantastic books, those. And then, of course, Scrambled Legs, and I've looked it up, it's by Jahanna N.Malcolm, that particular series. Thank you very much for joining us today on Raised by Writers. We'll have another great episode for you coming in the next few days, so listen out for that. Our guest next time will be the brilliant Coral Rumble, so have a listen out for that, and we'll see you very soon.
If you'd like more information on today's podcast, you can contact Paul Jenkins on social media using the handle @TeacherWriterPJ. Raised by Writers is a Double Rainbow production.